Greetings, Dan Halligan from Kayenta Games, and by popular demand I'm going to do a full two-player run-through game of Obsession, and it's going to have a couple of variations which are going to be used. I'm jotting this down so that I remember. Emily Bronte variation, seasonal market, means that at the end of each season this market is going to be refreshed. We're going to have an absolutely brutal winter, and when the new season begins, we're going to have a whole new array of potential renovations for the families. And then a Charles Dickens is going to join Emily. Charles Dickens variation is when there is a variable courtship, and that 20-sided dice is going to be what determines which turn the servants and the local grapevine of gossip discovers certain interests and passions of the two new arrivals into Derbyshire, which is the Fairchilds, Charles and Elizabeth Fairchild. A couple of observations about this video is that I'm not going to fix things. I'm not going to edit this. It's going to be all my stumbling and bumbling and heavy breathing and shaky camera out there for your glorious criticism, because otherwise this thing will never get done. So I'm going to try to hold the camera steady. I'm going to try to not breathe in before I make a statement, but I am going to turn the camera off frequently, figure out my strategic approach, and then film what that approach is so that I don't ramble on camera. The contest will be between Family York with their family advantage of an extra footman, and Family Asquith with their family advantage of having the Dowager Countess of Asquith living with them. Provides a fifth family card, and she gives an interesting favor combination of 100 pounds and reputation. Objective cards for York, not the greatest, which is 3 victory points for every monument, 1 victory point for every prestige tile that they acquire. Interesting combo here coming from Asquith, which is a reasonably difficult group, not the most difficult group, which is the flower room plus a garden. And there is a garden maze monument in this, which would count. And then 1 victory point for each estate tile. So really want to be focusing and building out the estate part of her organizer. We have a heavy service component coming right out of the gate with the brushing room, which is of great interest, to York, who could turn those two into backup valets and eliminate the need to get a valet from the servants for hire. A barn, which really interests Asquith, because the barn gives an extra bit of reputation every time one plays a tile for the estate. And then a butler's pantry, which is going to confer an under butler. Whoops, no sleeping on the job. And then 3 second level tiles, tennis court, breakfast room, and probably of interest to the Asquith. Oh, it is the flower room, which is part of that objective right there. So to begin turn 1, since we're doing the Charles Dickens, the cliffhanger variety of courtship, we're going to roll this 20-sided dice. 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. If that comes up, that will be when the theme card is revealed. So we start out with 19, so it's going to be a standard closed style courtship. So no one is going to know at the start of this game what will be the interest or the passion of the Fairchilds. York has the first player marker, and just a quick look at their 2 starter guests. Very versatile. This is a fantastic pull. We'll pop over here and just look at the Asquiths. Very monolithic, just money. That's a little bit disappointing for them, but they do offset that with her flexibility, at least bringing some reputation. But here, I'm sorry about the shadows. Here, that's a lot of starter guest flexibility and power. First turn for York, they decide, they have the first player marker, they decide they want to get after the brushing room and the butler's pantry. Think about the potential that would give their service staff. That would turn these two into valets as needed. It would give them an under butler from over in that location, which allows that under butler to do any male service role. One hiring trip to get 2 ladies' maids, and York feels that their 3rd and 4th season service staff would be an unstoppable domestic staff because they'd be able to cover every event and really empower some things. So that's the plan. Because we have an extra footman, York wants to do a footman activity. And so they're going to go ahead because they want to finance both those acquisitions in the first and the second turn. Going to do the bowling green. It's going to take the gentleman of the house and the lady of the house. Now the reason being is that the money here, but always I want to keep guests coming in. And so now I'll provide service. There will just be the 1 footman over here for service. My benefits is 500 pounds. Sorry, I like the viticulture coins, and so I use those. 500 pounds. And then she looks at 2 guests. Big value from her because, see, we get a pauper. It's worth negative victory points and costs money, but I'll tell you what. Wow. I'm actually going to go with the pauper, even though this gentleman here is wholesome and I could use reputation, the ability to start getting into prestige guests early, even if it costs me money, something I want to do. So I'm taking her, putting him in the discard pile. Let's go ahead and look at, we're done with our favors. We'll break down, we'll flip this, and we will go to the builder's market and pick up the brushing room that will cost, you notice that was discounted by 200, so it's 200 off the cost of 300. Only costs 100. Great deal. And into the discard pile. Move on to turn for family Asquith. Now, family Asquith is obviously eyeballing this flower room. That to them is the most important thing, but at 800 pounds, they're not going to sniff that. Remember that we're doing a courtship. We don't know what that courtship is going to be. One of the moves here for York was to get into a dominant position as it relates to service, which is 20% likelihood to show up for that variable courtship. Asquith's going to challenge them. You see here, this is 3 victory points on the front side of the private study. And by playing that, if Asquith plays that, they go down to 0. But the advantage is that Asquith is going to sort of project ahead to this village fair and the money to get them into that flower room, which is all important for objectives as well as for getting a dominant position here in the courtship. So we are going to first remember to and remember, Asquith has to get that tile before we have the Emily Bronte variation kick in, which is going to be a seasonal refresh on the first turn in the second season. Okay, this comes out. We have the drawing room, which could be really of interest here to York, so they're going to take note of that. So Asquith, after some thought, is going to play the private study, and they're going to get into that barn really pretty cheap for only 200. So by playing the private study and doing the gentleman and lady of the house, you can get the 200. So that's the play. Come here, provide service. No service for these two. We look at our benefit. 200 pounds come from there, but I will immediately grab this tile. And then she also gets to look at 2. Wow. Oh my goodness. This is the best casual guest in the deck. And it's so tempting to dabble with an American heiress early to get the buying power you want. But you can't pass him up. She might have been a consideration if Count Hoyos wasn't there. So we're done. So we'll go ahead and break down. Now we surrendered the lead there, but we create a real challenge for York, which is that if York wants to maintain that lead of 3 victory points for the courtship for essentials, they're essentially going to give up the value of 1, perhaps even 2 village fairs, which would be 600 pounds and 4 reputation, almost a full level of reputation. What will York do? We resupplied the builder's market and another service towel. All of them are showing up. This is the servant's quarter, my personal favorite. Servant's quarters allows player to use somebody from a resting position. Very powerful. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to advance to turn 2. York is going to stay on track. They have 400, and right now if you look, they can afford the butler's pantry straight away. So that's the purchase they're going to make, but not needing to get additional money to buy that butler's pantry and dominate this, and actually by not playing this, dominate these 2, and that is the decision they're going to make. They can also get into a dominant position by possibly doing something in one of these other tiles. They might be able to get into a 60% leadership position on the total number of categories. So yes, indeed, after some consideration, York is going to stick with the plan, acquire that butler's pantry with the 400 pounds that he already has. He is not going to flip the private study just because that's a guaranteed strong position, probably for a couple of seasons of dominance in essentials. And he wants to do something about his reputation early, and he can play this the game of whist in the front parlor with these couple of ladies that he's reviewed from his hands. So let's start our turn by rotating service. We do that here. Hosting an activity, we're going to host an activity of whist in the front parlor. We are then going to invite these 2 guests, Lady Mary Russell and the young lady of the house. We're going to provide service. We're going to have the housekeeper take care of the young ladies in the parlor, and we're going to have this lady's maid take care of our guest at the house. And let's look at our favors. We have, starting with pounds, we have 100 additional pounds for our 400 already on hand. And reputation, this is an admirer bonus. She only gets that when she's accompanied by a male prestige guest to an activity, or actually probably rendezvous at that activity. Accompanying the male guest probably is not protocol. And we're going to have 1 reputation there. We have 3 reputation there for a total of 4. Great little jump in reputation on turn 2. And we get an invite from the young lady. An undiscerning invite, a cad, William Tuttle, Esquire. Not a great guy. Not thrilled to have him. Put that back. We're going to go ahead and break down. Flip this tile. Take a leadership position in the courtship in prestige. Discard pile. Take 4 of the 500 and acquire the butler's pantry, which has a $100 premium from the $300 space. It's going to bring along this gentleman. I can't see him against the green there. Love that meeple. Going to come in here to orient to the house. At the expense of having some shadows, I put that light on over my head again. Amateur hour in videoing. So, second turn for Asquith. They can see that York's presenting a problem. They can actually hire right now, and by hiring, they'll force York to hire to have a leadership position. And I'm thinking that has some merit. The other alternative is to go here. If they do a hiring thing, they're only going to get 300 from the village fair. They're not going to have enough to get that flower room next turn because they won't have hired this turn. I think they have to focus on the flower room and draw even here. So they're going to rotate service, forgive me, and they're going to host 2 gentry for a game of bowls. The guests they're going to invite is going to be two that neither require service, the Dowager Countess and Zachary L. Esquire. And now we will provide service. The only one needed for this game of bowls is the footman outside. And we've completed that activity. We look down. We have 100, 200, and 300 is 500. Come down here, we pick up one reputation, doing a little something about our reputation, not a lot. And that's the extent of our favors. So we'll go ahead and break down. Flip this to draw even with York and the sporting category. These two will go to here. And now the question is, do you want to spend the 500 to get into that flower room right away? And I think the answer to that is yes. Just can't gamble. Taking the 500, that's so key to a lot of potential victory points. Now we can start playing these and start getting reputation from the barn, start getting points here, start building towards this. So they're happy with that play. Let's restock the builder's market, which is a fenced paddock, also of interest to Family Asquith. So Family Asquith has some nice options. But right now I feel they're trailing York. Turn 3 for York. And there is a village fair, which the family failed to plan for, and so they received no benefit. We're going to rotate our service. We're going to have a heck of a service staff, domestic staff. So after some consideration, York is going to make a play to put pressure on Asquith. One of the things I failed to notice was that the barn is the only service tile that confers 2 victory points, which puts York and Asquith in a tied position as it relates to the service category. But if York hosts this, that'll force the hand of Asquith to host this in order to stay even. Then York will be ahead, tied, tied, ahead, tied. They have no chance. York will not have any chance of losing the courtship. So that is what York is going to do. We've rotated service. The next activity is, or the next action is to host the activity. We're going to host afternoon tea. And we're going to do an unusual combo here. We've got a CAD coming along, but you notice that the reputation here counteracts the reputation here. It nets me 100 and an invite. I have all the mail service that I want to provide. And a footman up here. Now we get to the favors, and we have 100 pounds. Look at reputation. We accumulate no reputation, but we do have 2 invites, 1 from each pile. So Sir Charles Wadsworth invites Miss Diane Blowers. I'm really bummed out about the shadows here. I'm going to try turning this thing off again. See if that helps. So that's a great invite. And then a prestige guest, and sort of hoping for a 3. See, here we get a 6, and while she's loaded with victory points, she's not going to play for a long, long time. Good victory point pull, but not a very useful pull. The 3s can be great early on for powered events. So I flip that. That puts real pressure on Asquith, and I have 200 pounds to spend. Hey, you got to get off. I would have to trade some reputation with a special action here in order to get enough money to buy that tennis court, which would actually put me in a position behind Asquith, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to sit tight, and as York is not going to see any of those improvement tiles at the beginning of next season because of the variation we're playing. Back to Asquith, and it is a village fair, and the Asquiths have taken the time to prepare for the village fair. They receive some financial benefit of 300 pounds as well as 2 reputation. Very pleased about that. Now the pressure's been applied. Asquith's got a couple of choices. They could hire and take the leadership position here and surrender the leadership position here. They could play this and hold an even position here, surrender a leadership position here, and get their reputation up to level 2, what to do? You know, Asquith is tired after some consideration here of chasing York's tactics. They're going to do something a little unexpectedly. Tell me what you think of this. So we're going to rotate our service. And we're going to then move on to hosting an activity. We are going to the front parlor. And we have 300. Check this out. We're going to host these 2 ladies. We're going to provide our service. We're going to realize 100 pounds. Reputation. We are going to enjoy 3 reputation. Flip that to level 2. We're going to gather an invite. Come on, we need a good one here. And jeez, the cads are running about. The local landscape is populated by bad dudes. I'm over there. And we're going to break down. Flip this, drawing even there. But not so fast, my friends. I'm going to make a play to take the front side victory points of this drawing room for 500. Now, I only have 400, but I'm going to use a special action. It's going to cost me a drop back to first level, which is disappointing. I'd like to be at second level. But that allows me to afford the additional 100 pounds, take a strong leadership position here, stay even here. Gives me now more of a, and we're tied here. So I like my chances now with courtship. As indicated by the Charles Dickens roll of the dice, it is time for a courtship reveal. And we are going to move there. And we are going to reveal. Let's bring this over here where everybody can see. Dang shadows. I'll fix the lighting for season 2. Oh! Well, York's decision to stay away from the essentials paid off. So that is the scuttlebutt that's been gathered by servants and other people exchanging news that Charles and Elizabeth Fairchild really are traditional, old school, 17th century thinking young man and a young woman. Anyway, they love the traditional elements of a country estate. So, what is the benefit? The first benefit for York is that they get to draw a victory point card. Now, that's a victory point card without a favor because it's a relatively large number of victory points. So York's real pleased to get that. And then they get to invite, and they're going to invite the gentleman. And the reason they're inviting the gentleman is they're essentially revealing that the love interest here is with the young lady of the house. He's inviting the gentleman because he's got the brushing room and he's got the under butler. He has 4 people that can provide service for gentlemen. We want more and more prestigious gentlemen coming to the house. So courtship number 1 goes to York. End of season 1.